Okay guys, so to set up before we start rendering and doing everything, I'm just going to quickly go over a few little things we want to do and a few places you should know. So for one, I want to go into my render settings, this little icon right here. And for right now, I'm using the Arnold renderer. This is where you would actually switch between different renderers. Our choices for this class, we have a few different ones. Hardware isn't going to give us that much of a great render, unfortunately, because of our video cards, but Turtle or Arnold. So what I want to do in the Common tab, let's set it to Arnold for right now. If this is not showing, then we go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager. And this is where we turn that on. And what you'd look for, we scroll down and we find where it would say MTOA, Maya to Arnold, and we make sure those are checked. If we were using Turtle, we would actually find the little one for Turtle, and usually you can just go in and type and you'll see it. Oh, there it is there, and you check those. Next, I'm going to change image format to JPEG. And I'm going to scroll down to image size. And for right now, while we're working on lighting, I'll use HD 540. And then even when I'm rendering, I'm going to cut that down to smaller sizes. So that's fine for right now. I don't want to change any of this down here because we're not going to print. So 72 pixels per inch is perfect. All the other stuff we will be messing with. Oops, let me drop that down to 2. So that's way too high. We'll be messing with in a little bit. So you want to keep these kind of low while we just start our lighting and then crank them up as need be. And I think that is about it for right now. If your machine, this is usually checked, the auto detect threads. So depending on the machine you're on, if you're finding that, wow, I'm rendering and it's hard to move around, you will talk about how we could tweak this out to maximize that you can still do stuff while it's rendering, but don't worry about it for right now. You can leave it on. So I'm going to close this. If there were materials I wanted to add, and we've already started to go over this, I'd hold down the space bar, left mouse click, go to Hypershade Render, and these are where my materials in my scene are. So remember, I could select an object, right click, and assign a new material or a favorite material that you might have, or an existing one that's already in there, and just assign it to whatever you have selected. You can also select faces and then assign a material to just those faces of an object, not necessarily the whole object. But if I'm in object mode, I assign it to the whole object. That's where it's greenly, with a green highlight. If I'm rendering in Turtle, I'll use this renderer over here. Right now we're going to mess with Arnold, so I'm going to switch it back over to Arnold renderer and tap the spacebar here. And for the Arnold renderer, we're going to go under the Arnold tab, and this would just start the render and pull it up. Since I have no lights, we're not going to see anything. But this tells us like what passes that in AOVs we'll talk about later that you can look at, which camera, am I viewing all RGB and alpha, or just RGB channels, the alphas, is it scaled 1:1, meaning full size of the pixel resolution, am I rendering just an area? And this guy I look at over here, which is this, this starts the render and stops it. This refreshes the whole image, like if you change something, but it's not updating. You click that. And this little fellow, this little gear, turns on these settings here, which we'll talk about later, which affects the brightness and the control post, meaning after it's rendered. So let's get started, and we'll set up some stuff and go through some of the basics with the other tutorials of lighting.